basically I realized that it takes a lot more than just awareness. Awareness is great. Self-awareness is great. It is a start, but sometimes there's some levels and things after it. So when writing and reading and sharing this, when looking at the ego, I noticed that sometimes you can be aware of something and it's still a struggle. It's still something that you deal with. And I went to talk about, and hear a little bit about death and how when we die, our physical body is kind of like no longer functioning. It doesn't work. It's still, it's empty. But where is that thing that kept it going, And if you were your body, if you were this physical world, if you were your thoughts, your emotions, your experiences, that came out wrong. If you were these things, then you wouldn't just go like that. You would be gone with the body, but you're not. It's like, where did you go? And that's probably a whole talk for a whole nother thing. Everybody has their takes on that and their perspective of that. But regardless, it's like, it's a temporary experience, 1 minute, you zip up the costume and you're in a play, you know what I'm saying? You're in a movie, you're acting it out, you're experiencing everything that comes with it, within and without. And then the next, the costume is unzipped and, on to the next thing or whatever else, So it's just like the ego has this idea that it is the costume. But at some point, for some people, you get to a place where you realize that you're actually wearing a costume and it's a temporary thing. And that can be very disheartening and painful and depressing and sad, but it can also be very beautiful and uplifting and make you really appreciate your experiences, whether they're dark or light or good or bad or up and down, because you know that in this moment, that's your only time to experience it. Your only time to experience those people. Your only time to experience those circumstances, those places, those foods, those emotions and thoughts. And so, yeah, I feel like that realization can definitely transcend ego. And ego dies for some. Some people experience ego death, and that can be excruciating and painful because it's death. It feels like death, and it is death of this part of you that you identify with. You go from thinking that you are the costume to becoming aware and seeing that you're not the costume, and that's death. To a belief, to this idea, to this perception that I am the costume. So, of course, it can be definitely painful, and a lot of times you can experience the ego holding on, not wanting to let go. It's like, I think I mentioned in here, it kind of like runs and hides. I try to speak of ego as something that is not me. It's something that you experience and something that is part of you, but it's not all that you are. But if you speak of ego as ego, you're not saying me, my, I. You're saying the ego. It kind of helps, and it may make sense when I'm speaking on this. If it doesn't, that's fine. But I refer to it as the ego, something that we all have within us, and we're at different stages with it. But what was I saying? Oh, the ego death, the ego dies, and you become aware, but then there's also other steps, there's other levels to it that go beyond just being aware, because you are the awareness witnessing it. You are the person seeing the experience. You're experiencing it. You're here with it, but you're not it. Anyways, the ego can kind of like latch on, especially when you like realize, oh my goodness, like I'm not the costume. There's part of you, the ego, that wants to hold on to that old self that wasn't aware, didn't know. It tries to go back to the old. It tries to go back to the past. It tries to stay in the past and stay in a place where, it wasn't seen. It's like a little kid. Someone used this example. I don't remember who, but used this example of like a little kid hiding. It's like, a little kid that doesn't want to be seen. And then you like come in with the flashlight, that's your awareness. Maybe your awareness, it's a flashlight at some point. And you're looking around and you may spot it and it runs and hides. And It's like your awareness is that flashlight in that dark room, shining a light on everything around itself. At first, it was a dark room. I think Kyle C said this. But at first, it was a dark room. You couldn't see anything. You didn't think that there was anything there because it was dark. And then the awareness is like the flashlight that comes in. And you have a flashlight, and now you can kind of shine a light and say, oh my goodness, look at this. Like, I didn't even know this was here. Like, what? There's so much around me. And the ego is in that dark room. And so you shine the light on like the little kid, and it's like, oh, it doesn't want to be seen because it's always been in the dark, you know? And if you shine a light on it, then it's exposed, you know? And it doesn't have that same effect on you anymore. Now, it still may be there. And that's what I failed to realize, is that it still may come up and be there, but the awareness allows it to slowly dissolve into who you are. You know, the more and more that light is shining on the kid, it may continue to run and try to hide because it doesn't want to be seen. But at some point, for some, the whole light for the room may get cut on. And then the whole room is light, and then it has nowhere to hide. And that is death. That it can be painful because it's hid for so long. For many of us, we've had the lack of awareness within ourselves, you know, internally in our internal world, and then our external world. And we're seeing that today, where a lot of things are coming to light, you know. A lot of things are being shown that were hidden. A lot of people didn't have that same consciousness or awareness that we have now. Things are changing rapidly and things are coming to light. You know, that flashlight is being shined on a lot of things, and it can be painful to see what was hidden under the dirt, to see what was hidden deep down, to see what was hidden in the darkness and under that dirty mat. When that mat gets pulled off, like, you know, when that Band-Aid gets ripped off, it can be painful sometimes. And so I feel like that's happening on a collective level, where that flashlight is being shined in the dark room, meaning the world. And so a lot of things are coming to the surface, and it is painful and it is horrible. But at the same time, it's a beautiful thing because you see it now. And it can no longer happen. It can no longer stay in the dark because you see. And then from there, we're aware of it. What do we do next? How can we take action? How can we do things differently? How can we correct and do different from how things were? And that's something internally that I was experiencing, that you may be experiencing, where that awareness that you have, you see these emotions, these thoughts, these experiences that you have, your inner child, these different things that were hidden deep down. The awareness comes, and it's like a light shining it on the inner room within you. As within, so without. This is a perfect example for that, because that flashlight in that dark room is happening externally in the world, but then also internally for some of us. Maybe not all. This may sound like a bunch of gibberish and really confusing stuff to some, and that's fine, but I didn't even think that I was going to really dive deep into this, but here we are. And so as I was writing, I learned that just because you're aware doesn't mean that that's it. Doesn't mean that it's going to go away. And that's also the ego sneaking through the back door. The one that's like, I see it. Can it go away? Because it's still trying to hide. It's like, okay, you shine the light on me. I'm going to keep running and hiding under furniture. Okay, it's gone. It's like still trying to act like it's not there. And it may, keep coming up. And that's okay. Because you're not that which you're observing. Because you're observing it. So it's kind of like, very complex. And the mind may not really wrap itself around it. It may not make sense, and that's okay. But on a deeper level, it clicks, it resonates for some. But ego is interesting. Not an enemy though, because ego will make itself an enemy. It's something that you experience, and I feel like it could be a great guide. It can be helpful depending on your perspective, depending on where you are in your life. It can be a great guide and help you learn about yourself, learn about life, navigate through life, navigate your internal world and things that you're experiencing. It can help you. But it can if you make it an enemy, because then you become it. Well, you don't become it, but it's just another form of ego. So a character. So I don't know if that was relatable for anybody, but I learned that sometimes it takes a little bit more than awareness, but awareness is a great place to start and a beautiful thing. It's just once you become aware, once you realize, once your perspective has changed, it keeps going. It keeps going. It spirals. It spirals and spirals. Sometimes we can get stuck in the same cycle. Sometimes we can get stuck in the same circle for a season. But ultimately, I feel like it's spiraling. It's spiraling and spiraling, and you just become more and more aware. Once you see, you can't unsee it, and it keeps going and keep going and keep going, and it can feel like death over and over and over. But then at times I feel like for some, in certain seasons or when you get to a certain point in your own journey, it can be miraculous and magical and a blessing. I think that has to do with perspective, honestly. It has to do with perspective. So, like, personally, some days it's like, I'm glad I can see that, or, it's helped me grow and learn. And then sometimes I'm just like, I didn't ask to know this. Why do I know it? Like, those people that are just super aware. And like, just because you become self-aware of yourself or you become aware of many other different things, it doesn't stop there. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of like a spiral. It's like you think you realize something, you know something, but it's like you start to realize that you don't know anything. You start to know less and less, even though it feels like you're gaining more knowledge and insight and awareness. It's like the more you gain that awareness, the less you actually feel like you really know. At least that's what it feels like for me. It's just like, yeah, you become aware of all these things in your internal world and your external world. But at the same time, it's like, I really don't know nothing. Like, I really don't know at this point. And, like you may have felt like you knew. You may have felt like you knew everything about yourself or the world or how things are. And then it's like, boom, the flashlight gets turned on and you're like, I don't know nothing. Like, geez. And it could be scary. It can be scarier sometimes to have that light turn on versus being in a dark room, especially when you've went majority of your life up until that point in a dark room. You got comfortable with the dark room, even though the dark room probably wasn't healthy. You know what I'm saying? Even though you not knowing about your certain habits or beliefs or patterns, like let's say you had some really grimy stuff, some really dark stuff within you, maybe a habit or something that was detrimental to you and the people around you, but you weren't aware of it. You weren't aware of it, and it was weighing on your body. It was weighing on your loved ones. It was weighing on the people that you interact with. It was weighing on how you make money. It was weighing on everything, but you didn't know. And then one day, boom, you realize what it is. You have that awareness, but it's like sometimes that awareness can be scarier than the darkness that you were in, even though it was weighing on your body, it was weighing on your life and the people in your life, and it was detrimental. But you were kind of used to that chaos and that detrimentality. That's not even a word. What I'm trying to say is sometimes we can be so used to like that chaos or like, we can be used to it. And so it kind of feels like a comfort, even though it's not good for you, And I think I've spoke on this before. And I think I use the example of like relationships or something of that sort. I don't really remember, but I use the example of something where it's like, it may be bad for you, but you're so used to it, you keep going back to it. And I feel like that kind of happens with awareness. Sometimes we become aware of things, of life, and we awaken to these things, and it can feel so uncomfortable. We're so used to not knowing, I forgot the saying, but it was something. Basically, like you get comfortable with being like oblivious. Like you were so used to being oblivious, to not knowing, to being, and then you realize it. And it's like you're so comfortable with what was. You're so comfortable with not knowing. You try to get back in that space. It's like you were in a box, okay? It was like you're in a box. And then all of a sudden, you get a key. Not a key. I'm thinking a prison cell. You can use that as an example. But let's say you're in a box. And all of a sudden, you realize that you're in a box. And you get out of the box. And you're like, oh, this is scary being out of the box. Because all I know is being in the box. It's like that. That's a great example. Let's say you were trapped in the box. You know what I'm saying? You get out of the box, you're free. It doesn't feel free because it's scary and you've never been outside of that box. And so you fight to get back in the box. It's not you that's fighting to get back in that box. It's the ego fighting to get back in the box. This is a long episode, but I feel like it's a great one because this is some profound stuff, at least for me. And I have realized a lot of this through my own experience, through other people sharing their experience, through writing. Writing has helped a lot, where you realize so much, even though you've probably become aware of it before. Like the things that I wrote down and the things that I shared earlier in this episode, I was aware of it at some point. I knew it. It was like a light bulb switch. And I was like, oh, that's what that is. Ego and this and this. And I only shared just a portion of what I wrote. But a lot of what I wrote, I have known or I've known before, and then I lost sight of it. And so to write it out, it brought it back up again. And it's a helpful reminder. So, and that may keep happening. And it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. It doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that it takes practice. Once you become aware, it's a practice kind of getting used to this newness. And I think that is happening for some of us internally, but then also externally. Like I said, as a collective, us being together here on planet Earth, there's a lot of things that's going to take some getting used to. We're so used to a certain way of things going. And as you can see over the past couple of years, a lot of unexpected things have taken place. And now a lot of things are coming to light, and it's going to be raw and it's going to be real. But at the same time, it's like, as bad as it seems, there's a good to it. There's like this type of duality with it. And I think the thing that'll get us all through within ourselves, our own personal life, and as a collective, is finding that balance. Yes, there's good. Yes, there's bad. Yes, there's light. Yes, there's dark. But where can you find the balance? And I think for me personally, finding that balance, a way of finding that balance, which I'm still learning, but I think something that has been helpful is acceptance. Saying, it is what it is. Being able to see it from this broader perspective, to zoom out that camera lens and see the bigger picture and see it as what it is, rather than zooming in so much, looking at the details and picking apart the good and the bad. Because you're going to find a little bit of both in everything, everywhere. It depends on your perspective. But you can also go further out. You can zoom out and go beyond just perspective. And that's a whole nother thing. And a lot of this stuff is really hard to explain, but I think it's really helpful to share. Really helpful to share. So that's about it for this episode. This is like a 40-minute episode, but I hope you enjoy this episode. I may put it in 2 parts. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys. And if you are experiencing this, if you consider yourself to be very self-aware or just aware for, whatever reason, everybody has their own experiences in life. And some of these things don't make sense and they're unexplainable. I get it. But sometimes you see those things and you're still dealing with it. It's okay, because it's a practice. It's a practice. It takes steps to kind of fully integrate what you learned, fully integrate what you've been aware of. It's a process. And so if that's something you're experiencing, just know that you got this. You got this. And write. Even if you don't write typically, even if you write a lot, just try it. Sit down and write it out. Whatever's in here. Sometimes that stuff is hard to process. And sometimes we don't allow ourselves the time of day to process it, because it can be painful, or it can be weird, or it can be confusing. But something that helps me personally, that I definitely recommend, is writing it down, journaling it. A lot of people don't know where to start. I have plenty of YouTube videos for that. Go check out my content, Transform Perspective, on YouTube, and also here. And also you can personally just reach out and let me know if you have any questions about anything. I'm learning too. I'm not saying I'm some big guru that has all the answers. No, but I'm sharing my confusion and I'm sharing my experience and even the things I don't know, and just contemplating it, because you can help yourself and other people just by sharing. Don't forget to subscribe, share, like, follow. Transform Perspective is on YouTube with videos. It's more than just a podcast. It's writing content. It's tips. It's lifestyle. habits and different things that, all about transforming your perspective and embodying who you truly are and figuring out what that even is, learning what that is in your day-to-day life, and then doing those things that assess you in the process of healing, of growing, of learning. That's the channel is about. It's on YouTube, Spotify, the podcast on Spotify, as well as meditations and affirmations, and TikTok. And yeah, don't forget that there is a free 15-minute guided meditation for a deep relaxation in the description below on Spotify and YouTube. The link is available in the description. Click it. All you do is type in your email. You'll be put on my email list. I will not blow up your email. I will just update you with things with Transform Perspective, but you will get that free 15-minute meditation, and it's guided. So if you don't meditate and you don't, which meditation is for everybody, it's just being present and observing your internal and external world. I'm still learning myself, but definitely check it out if you've been wanting some deep relaxation. Remember, before I go, it is not about reaching for perfection, but committing to expansion. Have a transformed perspective.